Hi guys. It's been a while. It was a rough ending to 2021 for my family and I. But everything's good, and I'm excited to see what the Lord has in store for this year. But yesterday I got a word from the Lord, and I wanted to share it with you because there's quite a bit in it, so I think that I'm going to split this video into two parts, just because otherwise it's going to be like 50 minutes long. So here we go. This was given to me yesterday, January 8th. Hear me, my people! Exclamation mark. I have called you by name! Exclamation mark. Out of the grave I have pulled you. This year will hold great tribulations, great fears, and great responsibility. But take heart, I am with you always. Time is short, the door closes. The latter rain is here. I will bring wonder and amazement amongst you. I will bring my will, underlined. That was underlined. My will upon the earth. You have many plans. Vast is your imagination. But my ways are higher than yours. My thoughts are greater than yours. Do not, capitalize N-O-T, do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your, hold on, where was I? Do not lean on your own understanding, but in all you do, acknowledge me, exclamation mark, underlined, me. And I will keep your path straight. Do not fear man. I have conquered all, underlined, nations. The journey you are on will soon come to an end, and a new adventure will begin, more brilliant than your imagination can comprehend. Vengeance, it is mine. But on that day, it will be ours, as we fight side by side. You will be a witness to the generations, a standing stone, a rock to the weak. I will lift you up and cover you with my glory. Your face will shine like a candle in the darkness. Oh, my bride, my beloved, oh, how I love you. Oh, how I miss you. Holy Spirit, I long for the day, the capital T, capital H, capital E, the day, even more than you. My spirit that dwells in you, dwells in me. If you abide in me, I abide in you. And the time spent apart from now till the end won't be long. Do not, capitalize N-O-T, be deceived. You must run the race set out before you in my word. Go back to it, read it, bring it to me. I am, capital A-M, the I am. I'm going to repeat that. I am the I am. I am the, capitalized, underlined, answer. I am the answer. Do not go off what you have been taught. Bring it to me. That was all capitalized and underlined. All of you are missing out in my fullness in some way or the other. Bring it to me in prayer and supplication. That was also all capitalized. Bring it to me in prayer and supplication. Repent, as in tear your clothes and crawl on your knees in repentance. Show me you mean it. Cry, cry, cry out to me in mournful tears for your abominations, for your man-made idols, for your sexual perversions, for your iniquities, for your idolatriness. I don't know how to say the word. Idolatriness. You know what I mean. YOLO is not a thing in my book. Do not play with me. I am the Lord your God. Do not be like the Pharisees. And then he brought me to Matthew 23. I'm going to read this, and then we'll continue. If I might cut. I'm probably going to cut this after I read this. Okay, so Matthew 23, it says, Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and Pharisees have seated themselves in Moses' chair of authority as teachers of the law. So practice and observe everything they tell you, but do not do as they do, for they preach things, but do not practice them. The scribes and the Pharisees tie up heavy loads that are hard to bear, and place them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not lift a finger to make them lighter. They do all their deeds to be seen by men, for they make their I don't know what the word is, phylactery I don't know what the word is, wide, to make them more conspicuous, to make their tassels long. They love the place of distinction and honor at feasts and best seats in the synagogues, those on the platform near the scrolls of the law facing the congregation, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and public forums, and to have people call them rabbi. But do not be called rabbi, teacher, or for one is your teacher, and you are already all equal brothers. Do not call anyone on earth who guides you spiritually your father, for one is your Father, he who is in heaven. Do not let yourselves be called leaders or teachers, for one is your leader, teacher, the Christ. But the greatest among you will be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be raised to honor. But woe, judgment is coming to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven in front of people, for you do not enter yourselves, nor do you allow those who are in the process of entering to do so. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you swallow up widows' houses, and to cover it up you make long prayers. Therefore you will receive the greater condemnation. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel overseas and land to make a single convert to Judaism, and when he becomes a convert, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, Whoever swears an oath by sanctuary of the temple, that is nothing, non-binding, but whoever swears an oath by the gold of the temple is obligated as a debtor to fulfill his vow and keep his promise. You fools and blind men, which is more important, the gold or the sanctuary of the people, of the temple that sanctified the gold? And you scribes and Pharisees say, Whoever swears an oath by the altar, that is nothing, non-binding, but whoever swears an oath by the offering on it, he is obligated as a debtor to fulfill his vow and keep his promise. You spiritually blind men, which is more important, the offering or the altar that sanctifies the offering? Therefore, whoever swears an oath by the altar swears by it and everything offered on it. And whoever swears an oath by the sanctuary of the temple swears by it and by him who dwells within it. And whoever swears an oath by heaven swears both by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you give a tenth tithe of your mint and dill and cumin, focusing on the minor matters, and have neglected the weightier, more important moral and spiritual provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the primary things you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You spiritually blind guides who strain out a gnat, consuming yourselves with minuscule matters, and swallow a camel, ignoring and violating God's precepts. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup of the plate, but inside they are full of extortion and robbery and self-indulgence, unrestrained greed. You spiritually blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and of the plate. Examine and change your inner self, to conform to God's precepts, so that the outside, your public life and deeds, may be clean also. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. So you also outwardly seem to be just and upright to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build tombs for the prophets and decorate and adorn the monuments of the righteous. And you say, if we had been living in the days of our fathers, we would have not joined them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the allotted measure of the guilt of your father's sins. You serpents, you spawn of vipers, how can you escape the penalty of hell? Therefore take notice, I am sending you prophets and wise men, interpreters and teachers, and scribes, men educated in the Mosaic law and the writings of the prophets. Some of them you will kill and even crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and pursue and persecute from city to city, so that on you will come the guilt of the blood of the righteous shed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the priest, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. I assure you and most solemnly say to you, the judgment for all these things, these vile and murderous deeds, will come on this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who murders the prophets and stones to death the messengers who are sent to her by God. How often I want to gather your children together around me, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling. Listen carefully. Your house is being left to you desolate, completely abandoned by God and destitute of his protection. For I say to you, you will not see me again, ministering to you publicly, until you say, blessed to be celebrated with praise is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hold on one second. Okay, actually we're going to keep going because we're only at 12 minutes. So, I'm going to back up because that was a long chapter. So he said, YOLO is not a thing in my book. Do not play with me. I am the Lord your God. Do not be like the Pharisees. And then Matthew 23. Rejoice. Rejoice, my people, when you see prophecy being fulfilled. Do not tremble in fear, for it has already been written. It has already been done. I said, it is finished. And so it is. All these things must happen. Keep your doorposts covered and your lamps full to the brim. Soon, very soon, you will be dressed in white. No more death, no more mourning, no more sadness. Just perfection. Listen to the warnings. Heed my word. Test the Spirit. Know my voice. Stay awake. Stay ready. Not even I know the hour, but my Father in heaven. The fig tree is ripe and heavy with fruit, perfect for harvesting. Just as it was for me at the end, so it will be for my people. And then he gave me Matthew 27 and 28. And I will explain as I go how he explained to me. Matthew 27. When it was morning, all the chief priests and elders of the people, the Sanhedrin Jewish high court, conferred together against Jesus, plotting how to put him to death, since under Roman rule they had no power to execute anyone. That's kind of where things are at right now. They're plotting against us, but under rules that we have right now, they can't do anything about it. So they bound him and led him away and handed him over to Pilate, the governor of Judea, who had the authority to condemn prisoners to death. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was gripped with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They replied, what is it to us? See to that yourself. Hold on. I think it was supposed to be 26. It's 26 through 28. The chapters. But basically, it was a plot, starts with a plot to kill Jesus. And okay, he wants me to read it all and explain. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is going to be a long video, but if you want to hear it, if you want to hear what Jesus has to say right now, it's the Holy Spirit does not go by our time clocks, that's for sure. Okay, Matthew 26. When Jesus has finished his discourse, he said to the disciples, you know that the Passover is coming in 2 days, and the Son of Man is to be betrayed and handed over for crucifixion. Then the chief priests and elders, that's what's already been written. That was already said and prophesied earlier in the Old Testament. So we know prophecy is already here. Just like as we know Revelations has already been prophesied and there's no changing it. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the courtyard of the elegant home of the Jewish high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, it must not be during the festival, the Passover. Otherwise there might be riots among the people. Now, some of this, I think that you're going to get your own revelation of where and how, just like the why they didn't do it on the Passover, and the rioting among the people. So yeah, that's what. Now, when Jesus was back in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster vial of very expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' head as he reclined at the table. But when the disciples saw it, there was indignant and angry, saying, why all this waste of money? For this perfume might have been sold at a high price. I can't see. Sorry. For this perfume might have been sold at a high price, and the money given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of the malice of this remark, said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She has done a good thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. For you always have... I just can't see. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I assure you, and most solemnly say to you, wherever of this gospel of salvation is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told in memory of her, for her act of love and devotion. That is what we should be doing. That we have given our very best, we have offered the thing we love the most, that we have given it to him, and we have poured it on his altar. Our children, our money, our homes, our husbands, our wives. If you have done that, you have done the same thing she did for Jesus. And how it makes me so jealous of her that she was able to sit there and touch his head and pour that on him and do that for him. And I just can't wait till I can do that too. Okay. Then one of the 12 disciples, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, what are you willing to give me if I hand Jesus over to you? And they weighed out 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, Judas began looking for an opportune time to betray Jesus. So then he told me, just like one of his best friends betrayed him, your family, your friends, people you would think will betray you, will betray you. Now look, on the first day of unleavened bread. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, Passover week, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare you? What do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time to suffer and atone for sin is near. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" Accordingly, the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. When evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with 12 disciples. And as they were eating, he said, "I assure you, and most solemnly say to you, that one of you will betray me." Being deeply grieved and extremely distressed, each one of them began to say, "Surely not I, Lord." Jesus answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the bowl with me as a pretense of friendship will betray me. The Son of Man is to go to the cross, just as it is written in the scripture of him. But woe, judgment is coming to the man of whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had never been born." And Judas, the betrayer, said, "Surely it is not I, Rabbi." Jesus said to him, "You have said it yourself." Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And when he had taken a cup and given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new and better covenant, which ratifies the agreement and is being poured out for man as a substitute as an atonement for the forgiveness of sins. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you, and from now until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night, disillusioned about me, confused, and some even ashamed of me. For it is written in the scriptures, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised to life, I will go ahead of you, leading the way to Galilee." Peter replied to him, "Though they all fall away because of you, and doubt and disown you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "I assure you, and most solemnly say to you, this night, before a rooster crows, you will completely deny me 3 times." Peter said to Jesus, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same thing. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. It means olive press. And he told his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John, he began to be grieved and greatly distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved, so that I am almost dying of sorrow. Stay here." And I think right now that's what's happening. That's how Jesus is feeling right now. He's almost dying of sorrow because of everything and all the sin and the lawlessness and the everything that is happening here on earth. He's dying of sorrow. Not literally, but just so grieved. "Stay here and stay awake and keep watch with me." And after going a little farther, he fell face down and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, that is consistent with your will, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as your will, as you will." And he pointed out that part is, if we get to a point where we know if we get to a point where we know that death is coming and we have the time to think and say and pray beforehand, that part is what we should be praying. My Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, not as your will, not as my will, but as yours. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, so you men could not stay awake and keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep actively watching and praying that you may not come into temptation. And the spirit is willing, but the body is weak. And that part right now, just like keeping your lamps full, that's exactly the same verse as the parable of the 10 virgins. Keep actively watching and praying that you may not come into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, saying, my Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, your will be done. Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words once more. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Listen, the hour of my sacrifice is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners, whose way and nature is opposed to God. Get up, let us go. Look, my betrayer is near. As Jesus was still speaking, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, came up, accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came as representatives from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him. Immediately Judas went to Jesus and said, greetings, rejoice, Rabbi. And he kissed him, in a deliberate act of betrayal. Jesus said to Judas, friend, do what you came for. And he still called him friend. Then they came and seized Jesus and arrested him. And one of those who were with Jesus reached out and drew his sword and struck Malchus, the slave of the high priest, and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place, for all of those who habitually draw the sword will die by the sword. Now that verse, he pointed out to me that I am not sure where in Revelation, if you want to Google it, or don't DuckDuckGo it or something, that in Revelation it says there's a verse about dying by the sword. If you are constantly, if you think you're going to live your last days in a gun battle, you're going to die in a gun battle. That's basically how it was rolled out to me. If you habitually draw the sword, you will die by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will immediately provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? How then will the scripture be fulfilled? And it must happen this way. If this is the other thing, just came to mind. If they come for you, and I'm not saying tomorrow, obviously. If they come for you, if we aren't taken before that part of Revelation starts happening, go with them. You're not going everybody, no matter how bad they are, is precious in the sight of God. Our job is not done the second they come for us. How are we going to show the love of Christ? By shooting them in the face or stabbing them or whatever. Rejoice when prophecy is fulfilled. When the hold on, you just told me to go to Matthew 24. Okay. The love of most will grow cold, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. Let me back up. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. That's prophecy. Rejoice. Because once this starts happening in America, it's already happened around the rest of the world. Rejoice. Yes, it's if you let it overtake you and consume you with fear, you're completely missing it. Rejoice. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. How amazing is that? Like, to be hated because they hate me, because they hate Jesus? Like, I'm not worthy of that. Like, that just baffles me that I would be at that level because I love Jesus. They hate me just as much as they hate Jesus. That's crazy to me. At the time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people because of the increase of wickedness. And the love of most will grow cold, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. The love of most, not of many, most. That's like more than 50%. In my eyes, anyways. Okay. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father and he will immediately provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? How then will the scripture be fulfilled that it must happen this way? At that moment, Jesus said to the crowds, have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as you would against a robber? After day, I used to sit in the porches and courts of the temples teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets will be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. He didn't fight. He didn't fight when they came to take him. Those who had seized Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, yes. The high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered together, illegally together. Okay, so now they're starting to do stuff off the record and kind of change the laws. And what are they doing right now in the United States? But Peter followed him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest and went inside and sat with the guards to see the outcome. Now the chief priests and the whole council tried to get false witness to testify against Jesus so that they might have reason to put him to death. They found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, at least two came forward. They found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, at least two came forward and testified. This man said, I am able to tear down the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. The high priest stood up and said to Jesus, have you no answer to give? What is it that these men are testifying against you? But Jesus kept silent. And the high priest said to him, I call on you to swear a binding oath by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you have, in fact, said it. But more than that, I tell you, regardless of what you do to me now, in the future you will see me revealed as the Son of Man, seated on the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his robes in mocking horror and exclaimed, he has blasphemed by making himself as equal to God. What further need have we witness of or evidence? See, they're still twisting the whole court proceedings and procedures. Then they spat on his face and struck him with their fists, and some slapped him, saying, prophesy to us, you Christ, Messiah, anointed, who was that struck you? Okay, so he's still not fighting back, and now they're physically abusing him. Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You two were with Jesus the Galilean?" But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you're talking about." And when he had gone out to the gateway, another servant girl saw him, and she said to bystanders, "This man was with Jesus the Nazarene." And again he denied it with an oath. Remember about the oaths, the Pharisees' oaths and stuff? We just read in 23rd chapter. "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Surely you are one of them too, for even your accent gives you away." Then he began to curse, that is, to invoke God's judgment on himself, and swore an oath. "I do not know the man." And at that moment a rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the prophetic words of Jesus when he had said, "Before a rooster crows, you would deny me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly in repentance. When it was morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus. He put him to death, plotting against him how to put him to death, since under the Roman rule they had no power to execute anyone. So they bound him and led him away and handed him over to Pilate, the governor of Judea, who had authority to condemn the prisoners to death. When Judas had betrayed his betrayers saw that Jesus was condemned, he was gripped with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They replied, "What is it to us? See to that for yourself." And throwing the pieces of silver into the temple sanctuary, he left. He went away and hung himself. The chief priests picked up the pieces of silver and said, "It is not lawful to put these in the treasury of the temple because it is the price of blood." So after consultation, they used the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for the strangers. Therefore, that piece of ground has been called the fields of blood to this day. When the words spoken by Jeremiah the prophet were fulfilled, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before Pilate, the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said to him, "It is as you say." But when the charges were brought against him by the chief priests and the elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they are testifying against you?" But Jesus did not reply to him, nor did not even a single accusation, so that the governor was greatly astonished. Now at the feast of the Passover, the governor was in the habit of setting free any one prisoner whom the people chose. And at that time they were holding a notorious prisoner guilty of insurrection and murder called Barabbas. So when they assembled for this purpose, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to set free for you, Barabbas or Jesus who is called Christ?" For Pilate knew that it was because of jealousy that the chief priests and elders had handed Jesus over to him. While he was seated on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message saying, "Have nothing to do with the righteous and innocent man, for the last night I suffered greatly in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded crowds to ask for Barabbas and to put Jesus to death. Notice how the government is influencing the people's choices. The governor said to them, "Which of the 2 of you wish me to set free for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ?" They all replied, "Let him be crucified." There's the only way that the people here came to that conclusion is by strong delusion, by the evil covering that brings the delusion. That delusion is here upon us, and it's just going to get stronger. Why? What has he done that is evil? But they continued shouting all the louder, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but rather that a riot was breaking out, he took water and washed his hands to ceremoniously cleanse himself of guilt in the presence of the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this righteous man's blood. See to that yourselves. And all the people answered, let the responsibility for his blood on us be on us and our children. What a horrible, condemning thing to put on your children. Okay, so he set Barabbas free for them, but after having Jesus severely whipped, scourged, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium, and they gathered the whole Roman cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him as a king's robe. And after twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand as a scepter. Kneeling before him, they ridiculed him, saying, Hail, rejoice, King of the Jews. They spat on him and took the reed and struck him repeatedly on the head. After they finished ridiculing him, they stripped him of the scarlet robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to be crucified. Okay, and one of the things the Lord showed me about this part right now is when we are handed over to be, hold on, let me get the words right. Go back to Matthew 24. They'll be handed over to be persecuted and put to death. That's the same thing as right here. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same way. That's not even what I'm saying. But the parallels aren't the same. Now, as they were coming out, they found a man of Cyrene named Simon, whom they forced into service to carry the cross of Jesus. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine mixed with gall, which is myrrh, bitter-tasting narcotic, to drink. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among them by casting lots. Then, sitting down there, they began to keep watch over him, to guard against any rescue attempts. And above his head, they put the accusation against him, which read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. At the same time, 2 robbers were crucified with Jesus, one on the right and one on the left. Those who passed by were hurling abuse at Jesus and jeering at him, wagging their heads in scorn and ridicule, and they said tauntingly, You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself from death. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, mocked him, saying, He saved others from death. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him and acknowledge him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him. Not if he delights in him, for he said, I am the Son of God. The robbers who had been crucified with him also began to insult him in the same way. For the 6th hour, noon, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour, 3 p.m. So when people are saying, Jesus is coming, we've seen all the videos. They're all over the place. Dreams are all over the place. Prophecies are all over the place. Okay. And how many people are saying, where's your rapture? There is no rapture, and just mocking and ridiculing and digging themselves in a deeper, deeper hole. That's that right there. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out loud, in an out loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sab. It means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders there heard it, they began saying, This man is calling for Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and took a sponge and soaked it with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, Let us see whether Elijah will come to save him from death. And Jesus cried out again with a loud, agonized voice and gave up his spirit voluntarily. voluntarily, sovereignly dismissing and releasing his spirit from his body in submission to his Father's plan. That's what we need to be doing right now. Releasing it. Voluntarily releasing everything that we're holding on to our Father's plan. And at once the veil of the Holy of Holies of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks were split apart. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints, God's people, who had fallen asleep in death, were raised to life. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city, Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. Now the centurion and those who were with him, keeping guard over Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, they were terribly frightened and filled with awe, and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Okay, so, hold on. I've got three things all at once. I'm trying to separate it. Okay, so, after the fact, they all said, "Oh, he was right. We were wrong. He was the Son of God." When the sky is opened, at the time, okay, so this is Matthew 24. At the time, if anyone says to you, "Look, there is a Christ," or "there is not," don't believe it. Hold on. Okay. Matthew 24. At the time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to know they were wrong. And now it's too late. It's sad, but it's exciting. Okay, there were also many women there, looking on from the distance, who had accompanied Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him. Among them was Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus so that he might bury him. And Pilate ordered that it be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, burial wrapping, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a large stone over the entrance of the tomb and went away. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, the day after, the day of preparation for the Sabbath, the chief priests and the Pharisees assembled before Pilate and said, "Sir, we have remembered that when he was still alive, the deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise from the dead.' Therefore give orders to have the tomb made secure and safeguarded until the third day. Otherwise the disciples may come and steal him away and tell the people he has risen from the dead. And the last deception, the reporting of his resurrection, will be worse than the first, the reporting that he was the Messiah." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go with them. Make sure the tomb is as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure, along with stationing a guards of soldiers to be on watch to set a seal on the stone. So that part, he reminded me of when we are taken, there's going to be, everyone's going to see it, but there's going to be such a deception that they're going to make anything up. The aliens took us. I can't even contemplate what in the world they would make up, other than the aliens would be my only thought. But there is a reason why they are blowing up the whole alien thing right now. Now, after the Sabbath, near dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. And a great earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone from the opening of the tomb and sat on it. The angel's appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were as white as snow. The guards shook, paralyzed with fear at the sight of him, and became like dead men, pale and immobile. But the angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who has been crucified. He is not here, for he has risen just like he said. Come, see the place where was lying. Then go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and behold, he is going ahead of you into Galilee as he promised. Then you will see him. Behold, I have told you." So the women left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell the good news to the disciples. And as they went, suddenly Jesus met them, saying, "Rejoice!" And they went to him and took hold of his feet in homage and worshipped him. I cannot wait to sniff Jesus' feet. I mean, I'm sure it smells like chocolate and flowers. Call me weird, but oh, what a day. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and there they will see me, just as I promised." While they were on their way, some of the Roman guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. And when the chief priests had gathered the elders and had consulted together to develop a plan of deception, aliens, they gave a sufficient sum of money as a bribe to the soldiers, the media, and said, "You say this, his disciples came at night and stole him while we were sleeping. And if the governor, Pilate, hears about it, we will calm him down and keep you out of trouble." So they took the money they were paid for lying and did as they were instructed. And this fabricated story was widely spread among the Jews and is still present to this day. Now the 11 disciples, I'm just saying, the media, all the stations are controlled by 6 companies who are all being paid off. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had designated. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted that it was really him. Jesus came up and said to them, "All authority, all power of absolute rule in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations. Help the people to learn of me, believe me, and obey my words, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, remaining with you perpetually, regardless of circumstance, and on every occasion, even to the end of the age." So that was a lot, and there was a lot in there. And yeah, I mean, it's a long video. I'm sorry. But I hope you have watched it to the end, because there was there was some juicy stuff today. And I'm just so beyond humbled that he speaks to me. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and your week goes well for you. And oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say. I believe, in passing, I suggested that the shot that is going around right now was the mark of the beast. That is not true, because the second beast has to introduce that mark, and the first beast hasn't even come into power yet, so it's not. But what it is grooming. And if you know anything about being in jail, or the jail system, the prisoner system, grooming is just making somebody, say I'm the one in power, and I have a somebody that I can boss around, and I am taking care of them. I am making sure they have soups. I'm making sure that their hair's done. I'm making sure that they get some makeup or whatever. I'm taking care of them. I'm grooming them. to do my will, to do what I need to get done, to follow me. So I'm not saying if you got this that you're doomed. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is be careful with your spirit and how you're guarding it. Make sure you're guarding it with thick armor. Anyways, so I'm done talking. Okay? I'll see you guys later.